that identity card with them everywhere that they went. And symbolization, the word Hutu and the Tutsis were their symbol. If you were a Hutu, you were considered more superior. You were up there. You were like, you could go wherever you want. But if you were Tutsi, you were kept down. They didn't want you to go anywhere. They wanted you to stay in one position. They didn't allow them to do anything at all. And if you were in the streets and they asked you, what are you? They didn't want you to speak. You would just give them your identity card, they open it up, and if you're Hutu, you pass. If you're Tutsi, they kill you or they take you somewhere else. Dehumanization, that one. The Hutus gained power after their independence, and soon after they began to take revenge on the Tutsis. They spoke badly about them and even had a radio station to do so. They called the Tutsi cockroaches. I kind of actually went online to find out like why they call them cockroaches. I just don't know. Because cockroaches are at your house sometimes. You guys know that? Like you have cockroaches at your house and they're like under the beds or under the mattresses. And I guess they call them that because they were all over the place. There was a lot of Tutsis in Rwanda, and they wanted to get rid of them because that's what you do when you have cockroaches at your house. You want to get rid of them. You want to kill them because they are nasty. So they basically refer to the Tutsis as cockroaches because they were ugly, they were nasty. They considered them as being just nasty, and they wanted them to be out and dead. Organization. The Hutus planned how they were going to kill the Tutsis. They created groups such as because there were a lot of Tutsis in Rwanda. So one group couldn't just take over the Tutsis. So the Hutus created different groups such as you take over this part of Rwanda, this other group take over that part. And because of that, more Tutsis were being killed. And polarization. The Hutus made sure that the Tutsis were out of business. So if they had a little store that they took them out. They closed that store down. They were like, no, you out of business, and they just closed it up. And they weren't able to work. So if they wanted to go apply for a job and they showed their identity card and they look at it and they're like, you're Tutsi, sorry, we can't accept you. Just like that. Next. Preparation. The Hutus made sure that they had their weapons ready. Ready. And by the weapons, they used machetes, they used baseball bats, they had guns, and they got all of those materials from the Belgians. And they didn't care if children were involved, they would be dead too. They went after them, and that's when everyone knew that the genocide was about to take place, because they would just went after kids, went after grown-ups, went after women and men, and everybody saw that they were only targeting one group, all the Tutsis. And those are just children crying, saying what did I do? Seriously? I'm a kid. I just want to have fun. So. Extermination. The killing started. It's not so bad yet, but then it got worse and worse every day. The Hutus think that the Tutsis are not human and they need to be executed. In a couple of days, the genocide got stronger and stronger because the Hutus were taking over all Rwanda. They were in all parts of Rwanda. And they would have the same sort of army and enter Rwanda to stop it because the Hutus took control over mostly the entire country. And denial. The last stage is when the help comes. There weren't really that much help because no one wanted to take part of the Rwanda genocide because it was too strong. So they tried to come in, but then nothing happened. And then after that, they tried to blame the Hutus. They were like, oh, I didn't do anything. It wasn't me. So they took themselves out, and that's when they fled to Zaire, which is in around the Congo. They fled there, and then they act like nothing ever happened. They just was like, oh, I didn't do this. I had no part in this. But anyways, they knew it was them, so they took them, the Belgians, not the Belgians, the UN, they took them and put them in jail, and that's when they got arrested and stuff.
So U.S. and international community's response. The UN forces were forbidden to intervene. So basically, the United Nations, their response was, okay, we want to help, but we can't really put any effort into doing anything. We're just here to make sure that nothing really happens when everything was, of course, happening. People were dying, but they couldn't really enforce anything or they couldn't really do anything. All they could do is watch. April 21st, 1994, 10 Belgian soldiers were killed. So the UN had soldiers over there just looking, just trying to keep stuff. Well, they weren't really trying to keep stuff because they couldn't do anything, but they had soldiers over there, and the Hutus killed 10 Belgian soldiers. So the Hutus had this idea that if soldiers come over here and we try and kill them, then maybe Belgium will leave. And that's exactly what Belgium did. Belgium didn't want their people dying over there. So eventually, Belgium had 22,500 soldiers over there, and then they reduced it to 250. And on April 30th, the situation was debated in the United Nations Security Council, and they did not call it 10 soldiers killed genocide. So we had this discussion in class: how many people do you have to kill for you to call it genocide? They didn't want to call this genocide because they didn't want to go back in Rwanda. So if they called this genocide, the UN knew they had to get involved. Some international communities did get involved, like France. So France had this idea. They don't know what France's motives were. France had this idea to get involved, and they would be the savior. They would come in, they would help them, they would try and stop everything, but they got, France eventually, all the other countries like the US kind of got mad at it because they agreed that France wouldn't get involved, and eventually it did. So France was trying to make itself look good, not Rwanda. And France actually ended up saving 90,000 Tutsis, but it wasn't really for Rwanda, they were doing it for themselves. So because of the troops that were killed, you see them at Zaire, Kigali, Kibungo, they didn't wanna send their people over there, because if they sent people over there, then they knew Hutus would take it upon themselves and try and kill their people trying to help them. So it wasn't really working out. Despite overwhelming evidence of genocide, United States officials decided not to take leading role. So the U.S., I kind of got mad about this because they're always up in someone's business. But because they didn't want to get involved because they thought we should keep our people safe. But if France could go in and try and help, you could go in and try and help. With the evidence of genocide littering the ground, the U.S. did launch substantial. So this is what to keep in mind. They only went after the genocide was about to be over. So their response was that just wait till everything goes fine, or all the people, Hutus, calm down, and then we'll come in, and then we'll help you, and then we'll get humanitarian work over there. That's what they basically did. They didn't really do anything important.
So this man right here, this is Paul Kagame, the man who ended up being the president. This man was a Tutsi. He was born in Rwanda, and this was actually one of the men who ended up trying to stop the genocide from happening, and took a couple of actions towards it. Paul Kagame became president of Rwanda in March of 2000. This was right after the previous president, who was a Hutu, was killed. And then a few years later, another election occurred, and he won by a landslide because people saw that he was trying to stop the genocide from happening and pretty much stop all the killing. One thing that he was a big part of was the Rwandan Patriotic Front, which was part of the group, like how Rachelle said, that a lot of the fighting and whatnot, how they pretty much fled to the Congo. They were a part of pretty much making that happen. They were capturing people who were killing others and whatnot, and they were just doing all that they could to stop. So they were pretty much like a government-run rebel act to stop the others. So they were just running around. Anyone who was fighting and starting these huge battles on the land, they were trying to get rid of them and whatnot.